Last week's chapters contained a lot of healing, starting with Father J conducting his Silva method of mind development and stress control courses and gaining quite a bit of notoriety through the Michigan Catholic publication. He was also introduced to Dr. R.E. Tent, who performed diagnostic miracles over the telephone. But most amazing of all was Father Ralph Diorio and his healing ministry. There were several miraculous healings during that time. So if you missed it, please go back and listen to get all the details. I'm anxious to share the upcoming chapters with you, so let's get started. Chapter 38, Restoring Holy Trinity. Quite by accident, the responsibility of repairing and restoring the Holy Trinity Church building fell on my shoulders. Certain situations forced my hand. One day, just before the organist went up into the choir loft to play, a huge chunk of plaster fell right on the bench. It would have killed him instantly. Naturally, he was reluctant to play the organ until the ceiling was repaired. We understood without question. That part of the ceiling was taken care of right away. The repaired area held up well, but other pieces began to fall. 4 more pieces of plaster fell on 4 separate occasions. Even before pieces of plaster fell from the ceiling, another serious incident was caused by fumes that came right through the floor under the altar. I usually had people come up and stand around the altar during the daily Mass. On that particular day, a young boy about 6 years old passed out. He was struggling to breathe. Right away, a couple of men attending Mass wasted no time in carrying him outside. While they were gone, others felt woozy and complained of feeling nauseous. Then I, too, was at a point of staggering. I held onto the altar just to remain on my feet. Then I edged my way to the nearest chair. It finally occurred to us that fumes coming through the floor was the culprit. It was checked out. The cause? The fumes had leaked from one of the pipes just below the altar. It gets worse. I'll never forget what happened shortly after a Holy Day Mass when the church was filled with all the students from school. A large piece of plaster weighing about 20 pounds fell on one of the pews in church. It was close to being a terrible near tragedy since the plaster fell just minutes after 3 little children left that exact spot. It would have killed at least one of them if it fell a little sooner. It was a frightening experience. We naturally cordoned off that area and also the other areas where pieces had fallen from the ceiling. Then came the fire. Sister Ann Currier, the pastoral minister, woke me up one morning long before Mass time. It was obvious that a crisis had come up. There was panic in her voice. "The church is on fire. You better come down right away." I was dressed and in church as quickly as possible. The entire church proper was filled with smoke. It was also apparent that the source of the smoke was the church basement. Everything was affected by the fumes and smoke. The vestments in the sacristy, the walls, the ceiling, the altar, and the paintings throughout the church. An original and very dry wooden beam in the basement became overheated and combusted, causing it to burn, producing an unbelievable amount of smoke. There was no structural damage. Remembering the fire at St. Boniface and the diocesan policy concerning fires, I immediately notified the Archdiocese about the damage and the possibility of insurance coverage. The insurance company responded promptly, dry cleaning all vestments, and gave sufficient money to have the walls discolored by smoke painted over. The insurance company also did an impressive job of cleaning up the entire church and repairing any damage in the church basement. While they were making a thorough investigation of the safety conditions in the basement, they also discovered that the balcony was supported by 3 small 2x4 wooden beams. That was all. They informed me that the entire balcony could collapse at any time. Presuming that the beams would hold as they had for over 100 years, and since we could not get those small 2x4s replaced with strong metal beams until after March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, we went ahead with the annual celebration. Every space in church was jammed with people on that day. While the festive mood continued throughout that morning until the Mass in honor of St. Patrick was over, I prayed very hard that the balcony would sustain the tremendous weight of an exceptionally large crowd. When the Mass was over without incident and everyone had left the church, I gave special thanks to the Lord. The replacement of the original tiny beams was taken care of as soon as possible. With a bad record of disastrous events taking place in the church and in the church basement, we were told to have masses in the cafeteria until the repair work was completed. The church building became officially closed indefinitely. We began a bold fundraising program that would exceed $1 million. Coming from a small inner-city parish in the heart of Detroit, that was an aggressive move. Half the money came from Governor Jim Blanchard and from Mayor Coleman Young. They used state and city funds to handle the expenses in front of the church, since Holy Trinity was a historically designated church and desperately needed some beautification. Another portion of the income came from the fire. That became the seed money for the painting of the church interior. Then we appealed to every benefactor of Holy Trinity. We were doing quite well. However, the expenses kept increasing and we fell short about $300,000. We received a loan from Archbishop Szoka on behalf of the Archdiocese and agreed to pay it back in 6 years with interest. I had the backing of some wealthy friends and thousands of supporters from every class of society. We were confident of achieving our goal of paying it off on schedule. We had the momentum that turns projects into success. The pieces were all in place. We were in the middle of renovation of the church and beginning to put into action the huge project of reconstructing the entire frontage of the church. However, a serious interruption took place. While all this was going on, conditions in my life had changed. Chapter 39. More health problems. A new assignment. Nothing lasts in this world, especially good health. After about 8 or 9 years, I began to have health problems. It all started when I went to our Mother Cabrini Medical Clinic to be checked by one of the doctors. On duty that evening was Dr. Bruce Steinhauer, Chief of Staff at Henry Ford Hospital. I felt a cold coming on and I wanted to get some antibiotics or whatever so it would not get worse. The doctor kept checking my chest and my back over and over. Then he looked at me very seriously and said, "I want you to go right now to Henry Ford Hospital. I want someone else to drive you, and there will be a wheelchair waiting for you." That certainly took me by surprise. I asked what was wrong. "Your heart is fibrillating, and I want to take an EKG, and we don't have the equipment here." Of course, at the hospital everything happened as he said. He took the EKG, which verified his diagnosis. I then confessed to him that not long before I had passed out twice in the middle of the night. I went to the bathroom and I suddenly went unconscious. I'm not sure how much time elapsed. I got up and passed out again. My face was battered from each fall. My lip was swollen, my cheeks stuck out, and I had a black eye. When I said Mass the next morning, I could not convince the congregation that I fell unconscious without a fight. They all felt sorry for me. How could anyone beat up their loving pastor? I was unable to change their minds. Dr. Steinhauer then set up an appointment to have me come to his office the following Monday for a complete checkup. He had a private practice in Grosse Pointe. He saw me more than once that week, giving me another EKG. As part of his observations, he had me wear a monitor for 24 hours. By the end of the week, after many tests and observations, he concluded that, apart from the arterial fibrillation of the heart, I was in fairly good health. However, he was not sure why I passed out. He recommended that I see a cardiologist. He gave me the name of a good cardiologist at Ford Hospital. I was not sure of my next move. Meanwhile, I was praying for direction. I kept getting the same answer: go see Dr. Tent. Since he was not a specialist in that field, I was doubtful that I was receiving the right suggestion, but I called him anyway. I had nothing to lose. After being examined by Dr. Tent in one session, he concluded that he knew exactly what was wrong with me and that he could correct both problems completely within 3 months. Both? I said. He diagnosed the arterial fibrillation and also a failure of my adrenal gland to kick in, causing me to pass out a couple of times. I trusted Dr. Tent since he had already helped me with other health problems. He gave me a certain supplement again. I asked him how these supplements know where to go in the body and perform a particular task. I did not expect the answer he gave me. The supplements were all natural and organic. Meaning what? I inquired. That they are alive and know precisely where to go. That shook me up a little when he said they were alive. Then I remembered that tomatoes and cucumbers, grapes, and other vegetables and fruits are also alive when we eat them, and are highly recommended compared to certain synthetic and artificial medications produced entirely in a laboratory, with their horrible side effects to the body. Every 3 weeks I went back to his office and checked on my progress. I was right on schedule in the progress of recovery. By the end of 3 months, the last checkup indicated that I was in excellent health, with both conditions corrected. I was now ready to stay at Holy Trinity for many more years. The bishop of the region knew of my prior health problems, and so did the archbishop, recently elevated to the title, Cardinal. In spite of my recovery and health, the Cardinal Archbishop of Detroit made a decision that was carved in stone. He said I would be leaving Holy Trinity on July 1st. It was 1988. In his estimation, it was time to put another man in there. He assured me that I had done my share and did it well. It was time to let some other young person pursue the challenges and the unending responsibilities of Holy Trinity. I could not change his mind. Even the piles of petitions on my desk to keep me there and the many letters and phone calls from persons in high places did not dissuade him. I had previously learned to put a lot of trust in dreams. When a person prays before going to bed and sincerely asks for divine guidance, it is given. As the Master said, "Ask and you shall receive." With that in mind, I asked for a dream to give me a sense of direction in this matter. That night, I had a very vivid dream. I was singing with Neil Diamond. We were singing buddies. I had an arm over his shoulder, and he had an arm over mine. We were singing words to the melody of one of his songs. The words were slightly changed to, "Goodbye, my friend." We were standing in front of Holy Trinity Church and looking at it while we sang those words over and over. I slowly became aware of the fact that I was now awake and still singing, "Goodbye, my friend." It was so real. I looked around me. I then realized that the dream was answering my question. The time had come to leave Holy Trinity and say goodbye. I had a second dream when I went back to sleep that same night. I was at Holy Trinity, and suddenly the church changed into another building, as if I did not belong there. The second dream confirmed the first one. At that point, it became clear to me that it would be useless fighting to stay at Holy Trinity. I asked for divine guidance, and I got it. It was heartrending to leave the place I had embraced so totally and to be separate from the work and the people with whom I had become so familiar. I had a multitude of friends, the people who came for help, the very dedicated staff, the generous and friendly benefactors, the Hispanic community, an important part of my priestly ministry, the brother priests in the vicariate, the many friends in the news media, the legendary Max Silk and Leo Dodarian, the faithful doctors and lawyers who operated the medical and legal clinics week after week, the countless volunteers for the annual fundraisers, the Guadalupe Society, and about 30 different organizations in the downtown area. It was difficult to name them all. But the time had come to say goodbye, my friend. Thank you for listening, and please join us every Sunday at 3 o'clock for our watch party as I premiere the next chapters of Father J's book.